Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Haunt Collection Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris Codina, and you'll know when it goes up, but I think this episode might be a little late, basically just because I am not going to get the chance to edit it before it goes up, because I have to, no good excuse, I have to play Pathfinder. If you're not familiar with what Pathfinder is, it's a Dungeons & Dragons type game. It's a tabletop RPG. It was actually sort of made from the rule set of Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition, and it kind of became its own thing once 4th edition came out. And, it's fun. I've always dabbled in tabletop RPGs, and, recently have kind of, been, really playing them, kind of, trying to be, I don't want to say serious about the rules, but following the rules and all that, and kind of, really trying to experience, what the game has to offer. But yeah, it's a good time, but unfortunately, it delayed my chance of editing this episode. Or it's going to. I mean, I know it's going to. Obviously, I've recorded this beforehand. But yeah, it's, so, yeah. Without further ado, I went back to the historical archive on Creepypasta Wikia, just because I like that, whole concept of where it's, this mix of just sort of, was it early to mid 2000s, or sort of post creepypastas, just early internet horror stories, creepypastas and all that, mixed with urban legends and scary stories to tell in the dark, stories and public domain stories. I sort of just enjoy that whole thing. It amuses me in a good way. So I wanted to go back there and just pick out one. I was having trouble picking out one, but I just kind of was clicking around and all that. I kind of, like I said, I kind of wanted to go with one I didn't know. We'll probably do another one that I do know soon, and I still want to do that, non-fiction thing. Yeah, I just haven't had the chance. I want to make it, fun. I'm kind of trying to figure it out and how I want to do it exactly, if I just kind of tell the story or what. But yeah, hopefully soon we'll handle that. But, yeah, I kind of clicked on one. This is actually my second choice. The first one I started reading, I wasn't enjoying it because it was it was listed as the suggested reading, or it was Spotlight rather. So it was spotlighted on the front page. So I was like, oh, this is probably good, and it was just super predictable, and I didn't care for it. And I was like, this is boring. I don't even want to talk about it. So I'm going to try another one, and however this one goes, it's going to stick. But hopefully, I'll have more that I feel like is interesting to talk about in this one. This is called The King Come Down. It's an interesting title, at least. So hopefully the story is as intriguing. Hey guys, I have a story to tell. You probably won't believe me, and frankly, I'm done trying to convince people. We're going to forgive it on this one because apparently it's an older one if it's in the historical archive. But I feel like that became the front loading thing. You're not going to believe me, but this is my story. It became a thing. You know what I mean? That's sort of a cliche. To this is you're not going to believe my story, but this is it. It's whatever. It doesn't bother me a ton, but just sort of it's funny when you see that all the time. But like I said, this is sort of an OG creepypasta. Apparently, I don't know when it was originally written, but if it's listed here, was probably from some thread on Reddit or something in 2007. Who knows? Anyways, here we go. It was about 3 weeks ago. I was on Google looking for some funny sites to look at, and I found my way to an image board. Everyone on the board spoke in extremely cryptic nonsense. They said things like, "Heel, I saw them tonight. Holding's hand, we are up and high. 999-24028, the king come down." That was one phrase that was used repeatedly. The king come down. At first, I thought it was spam because of the number of strings that preceded it, but its use was way too frequent and erratic to be spam. There would be typos, and the numbers didn't appear to be random. I decided, fuck it, I'll see what's going on with this site. I posted in what appeared to be a random board, much like /B, as there was no discernible theme amongst the images and posts. So yeah, I assume this is taken from 4chan. Did I say 4chan earlier or Reddit? I don't remember. But yeah, this is if it's referencing /B or whatever, or the B board, whatever the terminology is. Yeah, I assume this is from 4chan. I said, "Hello, I'm new, and I was looking to start a funny thread." Very natural. I then asked them to post their funniest pictures. I almost said memes. The story says pictures, but I almost said memes because this is 2018, and even though I am not a memer, the word meme just sort of implanted itself there because that's how life is these days, and I want to jump out my window. Oh boy. Okay, let's continue. See if our narrator here is successful in starting their funny thread. That was the first time it started. I remember the first reply very clearly. It said, "Good to see you joined the help. From there it got strange. I was told to ignore the grafts." I assumed this was some sort of in-joke. From there, they began to speak like crazy people, posting seemingly random numbers and letters. Characters from many languages. A few seemed Russian and Middle Eastern, as well as possibly Chinese and Korean characters. I had no idea what was going on. Neither do I. But I think just this, like, the little bit in the beginning here, it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. It's obviously very cryptic. I'm not getting a sense of what's going on exactly. I could probably make some guesses, but hopefully, fortunately, the crypticness is working, and maybe if and when we find out what's going on, the nonsense speak will make sense. But yeah, it's the same thing. I feel like the spooky website or forum is also sort of a thing, but it makes sense, right? Like it's and same thing. This was an older story, I assume. So the well hadn't been quite as tapped as it might be now. So, like I said, I don't know, like when this was written, as in terms of like this and normal porn for normal people, but that's another story where it's just sort of like, hey, I kind of stumbled upon this weird forum and people were posting weird things, videos in that case, but yeah, that's the kind of vibes I'm getting from it now, which hopefully is a good thing because I like that story. I think it's a good one. So let's continue and see what we find out. Then I saw the phrase again, numbers, followed by the king come down. Following that, my power cut off. It was a complete blackout. It freaked me out. I checked the fuses and the switches had just flipped. Flicking them back up, the power went back on. When I returned to my PC, there was an image on the screen of a young boy. He was Caucasian, no older than 10. Oh boy, this might be troubling, folks, so prepare yourselves. I sat down, creeped out, but feeling curious, the boy smiled and appeared to speak, but I couldn't hear anything. My speakers were on, so I turned up the volume. I could only just barely hear what he was saying. It was a hushed whisper. I turned the volume up full, and it was still only a faint whisper. His lips moved slowly. Is he gonna get jump scared? Is this good? Did someone just like link a screamer to him? Oh, I hope so. Let's see. I pushed my head closer to try and figure out what he said. Then he shouted loudly, a booming and terrifying voice screaming at me like a demonic god. There it is. The image had changed. The boy was crying, his eyes bleeding heavily as white arms tore the skin from his face. Yeah, he got hit with a screamer. That's, early internet guys, right? As instead of the Exorcist face, it was the Reagan from the Exorcist face. It was this little boy. Oh boy. The power cut out again. Again, it was the fuses. When I got my power back, everything is normal. My PC booted up normally, and nothing creepy happened. So at the moment, if they're like knocking out his power, I don't know how much I enjoy that. It seems a bit far-fetched, but I'm going to see where it goes before I really get into that. Then I started receiving the emails. They were extremely cryptic and filled with random numbers, much like the image board posts. I got an email that was in regular English, too. It said this, just pass it on. Just fucking pass it on. I didn't know what it meant. I got up to get a drink in frozen fear. From my ceiling hung a man, his body swinging gently. On my wall, written in dry blood, were the words, "The king come down." I blinked, and the sight was gone. For weeks this continued. I went back to the image board. I was sure I was going out of my mind. I was just about ready to commit myself to a fucking asylum. I read a post in coherent English that said something like, "Pass on the king. Pass on the king." The thread 404 before I could even get into it. The thread 404 before I could even get to it. I went to make a new thread, and when I began typing, the words in my mind were not what appeared in the box. My fingers typed words by their own volition. I typed two things. HCHSUTHS and 4918484, the king come down. Then somehow I realized I was passing it on. The crazy hallucination stopped. I learned how to be safe. I'm sorry. HAKKSITMS 44919-174, the king come down. The end. Original author unknown. Okay. So yeah, this is the, what's that one, I might read it now and then, but you might know it by, at this point, was it the Soul Game or whatever? The old, here's my story, and, here's a story I want to tell you. It's kind of weird. And then, oops, I passed on the Ring video, like that sort of thing. And, it's, that definitely feels like what it was going for here, more so than, like, Normal Form for Normal People, where that was, in its own way, a little more realist. This one is definitely going for, like, something weird is happening. Instead of watching the VHS tape, I found a weird website, and there was this, weird phrases, and my power went out, and then there was a video of, a child whispering, and then he screamed, and his flesh got torn from his face, and then I was having hallucinations of Hanging Man. And then, it turns out that I was really writing this just to get you to pay attention, because I wanted to pass down the whole thing, and so it happens to you now, presumably instead of me. Which is, it's a fun device, right? That's a good device. It's obviously, like, effective, the whole, you have to, like, the moral thing, like, well, I have to make the choice, I just gotta pass it on and, inflict this on other people or whatever. At this point, like, we have little idea of what exactly happens if you don't pass it on. Generally, I assume the threatening images of the young boy and the hanging person is, like, kind of those sort of warnings of what could happen if you don't pass on the phrase and the numbers or whatever. In a way, I talked about it before, but I kind of like that we don't exactly know what all this stuff means. all the words and the nonsense and the numbers and the phrase itself, the king come down. We don't know what it means, and I think it works here for what the story is. My only thing is I don't think a lot of the weird, apparently supernatural stuff works. It's unbelievable, and it's also like it's one of those where it's sort of it didn't need like the supernatural. I'm not super into like I was doing something and then all of a sudden it flashed a bunch of violent images at me and all that. I'm not a big fan of that, but in here at least it would have worked in its own way. Instead, like I don't know. I can't be scared if the moment I read that, like, my power didn't go out and I started seeing weird things on my computer and, like, in my home and stuff. And in the sense of this, like, it's so short and, like, everything is kind of so random. That's what it is. It's, like, random, spooky, creepy images. It just, like, it doesn't work because it's just so, like, just disjointed and just sort of like, oh, here's a creepy thing and here's a creepy thing, and let me just throw all that together in a blender and, spit it back out and say, well, you read this phrase. Yeah, that's the thing I don't like about it is, I don't like its, chosen method of scares, associated with this website. But I do like the non-seeming supernatural stuff. I like the weird website where people are speaking in a strange way, because I feel like that's I've been kind of joking about that. I know I talked about it earlier. I talked about it in another episode where, like, I'm not a meme guy, so I sometimes feel like if I'm reading stuff from like a 4chan or something like that, like, it's almost, I mean, it's not so dramatic, but, like, almost another language. Like, when I see people, like, unironically using the term normies and, like, saying all this stuff, like, when I see, like, screen caps and all that, like, it feels like another language. Like, people hanging out have this, there's this, like, whole language on these sites that I don't know because I don't hang out there. And, like, this is sort of the extreme extent where, who knows what this means. Like, obviously, like, when he typed it out, it was coming out and, he was trying to type something else and he typed that. So, like, that's another, like, sort of, like, there's a supernatural element to it. But, I find the idea of, like, a forum, where you don't really understand what's going on because everybody there, like, it's kind of so obscure that, like, everybody there is just sort of, like, has its, knows enough that it just, like, talking their own, like, code, sort of. Obviously it's taken to an extreme extent, but, like, I kind of get that. And, I like the idea, like I said, that, we don't get what any of this means. Obviously, there's, like, some urgency for the narrator to have passed this on. Like, he was getting messages to pass it on and all that. It's just, like I said, the threats, the weird supernatural threats and all that just didn't really seem effective to me. So yeah, it's a good idea. It's just, like I said, this is kind of this must be an old one if it's in this historical archive section. So it's possible people have read The King Come Down and all that and taken inspiration from it. I don't know. I've personally never heard of the story, but it's kind of fun seeing these like I said, like these original creepypasta like type things where you go and post on an internet forum this creepy story you came up with, and just to do it just for fun, and seeing how much it's changed and grown and fallen, some might think, or, evolved is another way to look at it. It's interesting. Like, I kind of want to keep going through these old ones, because it's like creepypasta history class, It's, I wish there was, like, some dates on here and stuff like that of when it was originally posted, so I would know. But yeah, I don't know how much more there is to say on it aside from like I said, there's some ideas in there I like, but I'm not too big on the execution. Like for the end, the sort of the punchline, the twist or whatever is twist is more accurate. That they were really baiting us into having into reading their message so that they were able to pass it on. Like I said, it's a good device. It's it's effective. It's on it. It can give you that little like that goes back to Call of Cthulhu. If you've ever read Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu, it ends with sorry baited you. Just kind of in a way because the narrator kind of says, like, it kind of gives you, like, I'm sorry I involved you in this because if you know about the cult, then they come for you, like, kind of something like that. I haven't read it in a while, but that's the base, the basic way of how it ends is, this guy's been investigating this cult of this, ancient unknown eldritch being, and then he kind of like realizes that like the cult murdered his uncle for studying them or whatever and looking into them, and now he's like, and now I know they're coming for me, and I put the story out there, so now they're gonna come for you. I'm sorry, be careful, watch out. Like it's a fun twist. Because it's a good one to give the reader a little ooh, like a little look look over your shoulder because might be spooks coming for you. And like I said, I like the inscrutable forum that just seems like a 4chan forum of nonsense really being something weird and sinister. And we don't quite know exactly what that weird and sinister is. I just like the making it supernatural. I don't know. I don't like it. It doesn't work for me to that extent. I think that's gonna do it. There's not really much more to say on it, right? I feel like this is a slightly shorter episode. Usually I hit a half hour, I think at least, but there's no need to drag it on, right? Definitely. Like always, the link will be in the description if you want to read it for yourself. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. All these YouTubers say. For as long as people are gonna last on YouTube, because YouTube does not care about anyone but really big content posters, apparently, and people that just spam content and don't like low effort stuff. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Later.